And away we go. We are. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone in the United States had a wonderful 4th of July holiday weekend like I did. My air conditioner only broke down once, which is really nice. The grid stayed alive, so that's good. We're safe here in Texas, at least now from any ERCOT incompetence. Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for joining our show. And with us today, with me today, I'm David Blackmon. I'm very slow this morning. I've been dealing with that air conditioner all morning. Anyway, it's fixed now. It's nice and cool. With me today,
I didn't know we had Biden on the thing today. Thank you, President Biden, for stopping by.
With me today, as you can see, is Stuart Turley, President CEO of the Sandstone Group and the honcho behind Energy Newsbeat. Tammy Nemeth, who is in the UK today, right? That's your UK location. Yep.
Yeah.
She alternates between Canada and the UK, so she's been right there in the middle of those recent elections. I'm sure we'll talk about at some point today. And Irina Slav from Bulgaria. How are you?
Hot.
Yes, hot. It's like Texas over there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I compare everything to Texas. I can't help it. Sorry. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. I understand over the next couple of weeks we're going to be missing one member or another for each of the next two shows, but the whole gang's here today. And we're going to talk about whether or not our topic today is big tech an energy transition roadblock? Okay. Not a facilitator, not a feature, but a glitch in the energy transition. It's an interesting question that I don't know the answer to exactly, but I know that my three fellow panel members will have a lot of good insights on. So let's start with Irina Slav, since I believe, Irina, you suggested this topic, right? Or was it Tammy?
Oh, yeah, kind of.
No, it was
Okay.
Irina.
Irina. So, Irina, is big tech a feature or a glitch of the energy transition?
It's a glitch, and it's a huge one, potentially huge one, because big tech companies have been, these champions of the energy transition. They have been so actively promoting net zero, and they have been advertising their efforts in super boring language. By the way, I suffered reading through their statements regarding their net zero efforts, so-called, and the level of corporatese language was amazing.
Yeah.
So many words saying nothing. But the thing is, big tech, even without AI, is a huge energy drain. They need a lot of electricity to function. And to my mind, this is why they're so actively promoting their so-called efforts to go
Right.
all green by buying carbon offsets and renewable energy credits, mostly. Because there is no physical way that they can secure all the electricity they need to function from wind and solar, even with all the batteries in the world. But they still claim that they are going 100% green by whatever year. And Google just admitted that its emissions have slashed by 50% in, was it 5 years or something? Despite all those efforts, all that buying of renewable energy credits, what gives?
It's a good question, isn't it? Tammy, what do you think?
Well, I sent a couple articles around this morning, and what I find so interesting is the contradictions, right? It's when we had Tom Kirkman on, I mentioned this as well, where it's like we have to have all of this AI and whatever to monitor how much energy we use because we have to conserve energy because the grid's unreliable, because we've used all this wind and solar on the grid and all this other stuff. But now we need AI to manage it all to make sure that it can be shifted from one region to another with the interconnects and all these different kinds of things, and to control consumer behavior and just everyday citizens, how they use their energy. So we need AI to control all that, but AI takes up all the energy. So it's this bizarre circular thing where it's like they've created a problem and the solution is always more control over what people do. And one of them that's been put out there, and I guess Vermont is trying it, and California is doing a study on it, and I think Colorado also is studying it, is virtual power plants, which is the most ludicrous idea ever. And they use this euphemistic language about, oh, well, in the UK, they called it load control and efficiency of the grid and everything. But what it really means, and to nudge consumer usage, which is a euphemism for rationing.
Right.
So, and everything that they do ends up being for you and me and the mom down the street and the retired person in their flat, is they have to scale back their energy use so that AI can tell them what it is they have to do to scale back or to do it for them, right? When you're just going to be cut off. And so big tech is partnering with a lot of the different grids and whatnot in order to do all this, which of course then destabilizes the grid even more. And perhaps a little bit later, we can talk about some of the proposed solutions besides rationing that they want to do.
Oh God, solutions, man. It's such a fearful topic with these people because their solution is always going to be more control over the rest of us. Stu, what do you think?
Yeah.
What were you saying, Irina?
And less energy.
And less energy,
Yeah,
yes.
less energy.
Yep.
And more expensive energy.
And more
I think that we are in a critical point in humanity's time period. And I don't mean this in a flippant way. I think that AI has the potential of not only being racist, I think AI has the potential of widening energy poverty like you wouldn't believe. And I think what we're going to see out of this is two separate grids. You're going to have a private grid, those that can afford the energy. And then you're going to have a public grid, which is managed kind of like the Biden administration and their $7.1 billion for zero chargers. And I see you're going to have a public grid that is actually looking like it's got one tooth and, trying to eat a corn cob. And then you're going to have a private one that only the rich can afford. And I really believe that we are going to be in those that have money can afford healthcare. Those that have money can afford energy. And we're approaching it, and it's going to be worse.
I tend to agree with that, actually. I think we're already seeing it. A lot of these AI server farms. Yes, Stu, I agree with you.
Sorry, David.
No, but we already see it. These some of the big server farms and AI installations are already saying they're going to build their own power generation to supply their needs, right? And they're not going to be on the grid. And so what does that do? It eats up resources that could potentially be spent on additional generation capacity to go on the public grid. But now it's going to be a privately held thing. And they're going to be able to manage whatever power generation they build for their own specific purposes. They're also going to be able to, if they can figure out how to make it work, sell power from the generation they build to other high-tech companies, or whatever companies want to buy electricity from them rather than connect to the public grid. But in order to buy proprietary electricity from a company rather than hook up to the grid, you've got to have the financial wherewithal to be able to afford to do that. And that's exactly the kind of bifurcated situation I think Stu is talking about. And so it's already happening in the United States, and I assume it's probably happening in Europe as well.
Patrick brings up an excellent point and a follow along on some of this research I'm working on here. Will they use coal, natural gas, wind, and solar? And Patrick's point is extremely right on the money, because is it going to be government and the public grid? Are they going to use coal, natural gas, wind, and solar? Or are they going to limit themselves to renewables only? And then is the private sector going to use natural gas and nuclear and try to meet the net zero goal? So that was a great point, except you're going to be pointed at the political Nimrods. Since there's no more Nimrods around the world, I can say Nimrod. The Nimrods around the world are going to be having bad energy policies.
And everything that gets built, regardless of who's building it, still has to be permitted, right? It still has to be able to obtain the government licenses that are required to build the capacity. So the easiest thing for a company, a corporation to do is be, well, I'm only going to use wind, solar, and batteries. And then they're going to find out that doesn't work. And then they're going to have to go back to the government and say, I really need a permit to build a natural gas or modular nuclear, or whatever it is, to power my facility. And then it will be become, as Stu points out, a matter of public policy, whether or not you can get anything else permitted eventually. And that's where we are. I mean, Tammy, Irina.
Well, I wonder if the permitting would be different, because if you're just doing it for like the use of an industrial facility, and I'm assuming that one of these server farms or whatever is considered an industrial thing, they're not actually saying we need all these transmission lines and all these right of ways and all these other things that are required to hook something onto the grid. We're just going to use it for ourselves. And so therefore we can use the natural gas right off the pipeline. And I've seen an uptick in certain jurisdictions where some of this is happening. They just do it right off the pipeline, set up a little small natural gas sort of generating facility in order to power that. So they don't have to hook up to the grid. And so I'm wondering then if the approvals and the environmental assessments are less onerous than if you're doing a larger scale project that requires all the different right-of-ways and all of those other things. But that two-tiered idea, I think, is extremely important. And even though there's a lot of industries out there that do their own power generation, whether it's combined heat and power or, something like that, I think what's being proposed here is on a much larger scale. And I wonder if the argument will be, well, we need this, even though it will have emissions, because we need reliability. And we're just going to do natural gas until we get the SMR up and running. And we need it because we don't use as much energy as maybe the average public that is very emissions intensive. And I could see this kind of rationalization coming out of it, which of course would be a contradiction.
That could happen. I mean, you'd have to get those exceptions put either into regulation or law, which I'm not aware of any that exists right now in the United States, but certainly I think those arguments it's inevitable. All that's going to, be argued, and the government's going to have to decide how it wants to regulate it.
Yeah, but someone would have to protest against this, because otherwise they'll just ignore it. As they have ignored so many of the drawbacks of wind and solar and batteries and all that.
That's right.
If you ignore it, it doesn't exist.
This great Substack author wrote this morning, market always wins. It's an absolute wonderful Substack. Go out to irinaslav.substack.com and subscribe. You got to read that one every time it gets published.
It's just so simple and so obvious. And this is what I've noticed, that a lot of obvious things are being ignored on purpose.
Yes.
That doesn't really make them disappear.
Yeah.
Right.
It's exactly the case with big tech or whatever other industry that claims it's very green is going to get even greener, even though it is physically impossible.
The problem is we have regulators and politicians who have no knowledge of how markets work or the power of
And they
markets
don't
making
care.
all these decisions.
No, they
and
don't care. They think they can beat the market
Right.
with their
Exactly.
regulation.
Chapter 4, travels, not a
So
roadblock at all, just the opposite. It's a wake up to the fact that so-called renewables will never be able to power our modern way of life. Only advanced
Absolutely.
nuclear can do that. Yeah, eventually, I mean, that's where we're going to have to go. It's, it becomes more obvious every day that if you really want a net zero grid, net zero society, you're going to have to fill it up with nuclear. It's just, there's no other viable alternative at the moment.
Yeah, if we really want to be fully electrified.
Right.
I want to ask our
right,
the
but
people that are
how long does
listening-
that take?
Exactly.
decade.
I want to ask our
a
folks
century
that
or
are.
more.
I want to ask our folks that are listening as well, if you have any comments or ideas on this, because we're getting some fantastic comments in here. What can we do to make nuclear better or achievable, or besides blow up the entire, redo the entire regulatory process? Because we've got to have them.
This is a great comment.
For our podcast listeners, will miniature nuclear reactors cover an office, campus, or city block distribution radiate potential in such homogeneous manner that wars will have to be fought in new ways? Imagine bombing a building and releasing radiation supplying the building. Terrorism would be a lot easier. How much security can a 50,000 mini nuclear generators? It's an interesting question,
It's a real interesting question, and I don't think anybody has the answer.
We don't, and
Yeah.
I think we're coming into a time period where that's not going to even be an issue, because we have so much potential terrorism available with swords and knives that I don't know that they're even going to get to the nuclear reactor with some things coming around the corner.
And our
Yeah,
grid
that's
is already incredibly subject, vulnerable to those kinds of attacks already. Every switching station in America, there's tens of thousands of them. You knock one of those out, you knock power out to a community for weeks. And
I don't want to side rail us, but the grid security in all countries is a real issue. And in the United States, the current Biden administration put executive orders in that put over 32 major connections that could take an estimated 15% of the grid down remotely now by the Chinese. 100% on the Biden administration. I'll shut up now.
Irina, you got to sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize for that.
Oh no, I was just going to say that this is one of the reasons why small modular reactors will probably not be in wide use anytime soon. In addition to apparently very steep costs that just derailed some project in the US. But as Mihai says, more
easiest to build large nuclear.
Yeah. Because we already have the technology, we know how to build them. Just build more.
Yeah.
I don't know how
you can do that.
I mean, that is a solution.
Go ahead.
But sorry, David, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you.
I'm just thinking, they talk about large, but it's like they want all of these different micro places so that it's more controllable for that particular small area. And again, it's this contradiction, because on the one hand, there's lots of talk about how we need all these interconnections so that you don't have to have these generating abilities in one particular place, but you could have wind and solar or battery spread out, and then you could, with AI or whatever, be able to manage it on a continental level, which I think is crazy, especially from a security perspective. But then on the other hand, there's this push for SMRs so that you could have much more localized generation that would preclude the need for interconnections. So it's like, okay, which one is it? You're putting money into both of these. What's it going to be, and why can't we just keep the regular grid? Because I think one of the other things that I think we need to discuss with respect to the AI issue and big tech and whatever, what about their emissions? Isn't this all supposed to be about lowering emissions?
Supposed to be. Until the people with the deepest pockets, with members of Congress of a certain party, start having a need to increase their emissions. Then it's all about something else.
Right.
Which is, again, why we
Okay.
have the wrong people making all these decisions in the first place.
You know, David, that's exactly what I do every time I look at a debate or, something political. This is me watching stupid energy policies. Sorry for sharing.
Whoops. Yeah, there you
We
go.
missed. Let me start this over here. Yep, there we go. This is me watching either a political thing going on. Notice my guy in the tube next to me here. I am just like, I'm losing my patience. Unfortunately, human resources has been called in on me several times now.
Yeah, I worked in a space just like that for coastal states in 1980. Oh my God, what a horrible existence.
I'm impressed that his keyboard didn't snap when he hit
I know.
the monitor.
Yeah.
Well, that has been around for a million years. I can't believe I
Those
found
were
it.
sturdy. We still have a keyboard that's about, it's definitely more than 20 years old, and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keyboards go on forever.
We had, sorry.
Go ahead, Stu.
No, we had a bunch of comments in there that started rolling through. Didn't.
Let's see here. Well, so my opinion, small reactors better suited to high energy sinks like AI farms. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of advantages to SMRs if you can ever, get the policy right behind them, because think of all the hundreds of billions of dollars we're going to have to spend on transmission, and we've been spending on transmission for wind and solar arrays hundreds of miles away from the market centers. In Texas alone, we spent $7 billion on lines from West Texas to the Houston and DFW markets in the first decade of this century. $7 billion to build those transmission lines. And they're the most inefficient way possible to bring that electricity to market. It's a completely inefficient model, and yet we're still doing it. Our regulators in Austin are still permitting these things. And even despite the knowledge, they know it's the wrong model. Anyway.
Robert Brookfield National Labs are doing this right now, working on building tens of thousands of nuclear reactors. I'd like to find out more about that.
Yeah.
Like I've interviewed the CEO of Copenhagen Atomics, Thomas Jam, a year ago. I've reached out to him to talk to him again. Thorium reactors. They were on track to build a SMR the size of a semi. You roll it in and you drop it right on in on a coal fire plant. You use waste from the old reactors. Wow, this is cool. Let's go get this kind of stuff and get it automated and not pay for these transmission lines, and then put the money in where you need to and drop these things into coal plants. Anyway, sorry.
That's a good point. Let's see. How to power Patrick Devine, how to power high energy sinks is one thing, but who's thinking of a solution when this SMR have to come offline for maintenance? Where will the backup power come from?
Good point.
Good question. Again, just
Diesel
Patrick's
generators.
got coffee this morning. I wonder if he's having
diesel generators.
coffee, or he's not having cocaine or whatever Biden's on.
The energy transition will take 100 years globally. I think it's going to take more than that, because what we've been doing so far is also wrong-headed. It's all going to have to be done over again. And so you're looking, I mean, it's been going, this transition supposedly has been going on for 20 years. And it's going to go on for at least 100 years after
But
today.
it has to happen. It has to happen organically, naturally.
Yes.
If it's going to happen at all.
Right.
I
It
believe
can't
the
be
market
driven by
always
government.
wins, Irina. The market always wins.
Market always
Not
wins.
just market. It's human nature. You can only
Common
force it
sense.
so much. You can't force it all the way and all the time.
Especially if
best
it's not a better
example?
replacement.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, isn't the best example of that today that in 2023, the Earth burned more wood for energy than ever at any time in history? Okay. The transition from wood to coal started in the 15th century in England. And here we are 600 years later or 500 years later, burning record amounts of wood for energy. Okay. So, I mean, it's just, this is, and people who think we're going to get entirely off of fossil fuels and go to something else are completely wrong. They're just idiots or they're lying, one or the other. They're wrong. That's never
They're
going
in
to happen.
politics.
No,
Yeah.
they can't realize that we can't have a revolution. It has to be evolution if it
Right.
is to work.
Right.
Because that's how the industrial revolution happened. But I don't really think that the revolutionary part was, the set of inventions, the internal combustion engine, the steam engine. We're calling it revolution because why? Because of these inventions. But if you think about it, as you said, the transition from wood to coal and all the rest of it started 500 years ago.
Yes.
That's evolution. That's not revolution.
Right.
There were revolutionary moments, and now we have sort of like revolutionary moments if we're talking about small modular reactors, when they would be able to build them economically.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, David, I'm not sure who this is. Apparently, Austin, Texas is using the guide to insanity for dummies.
That's always been the guide in Austin, hasn't it?
I think so. Or it's the Biden
Pretty sure.
administration. Yeah. Holy smokes.
Oh, it's Travis Lynn. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Travis. Europe helped after LNG lines were blown up and nuke plants shut down. More wood was burned in 2023.
There weren't LNG lines, there were gas pipelines.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. The Russian, yeah.
Nord
Stream 1 and 2, yeah. Gosh, who blew up those pipelines? It's just, I mean, it's kind of
We'll never know.
hard to imagine who might have done it.
We'll never know, but Biden bragged about it.
Yes. Let's see here. Look up Pipe Dream Labs from Robert De Domenico. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, so let's, I guess we've beaten many market victories, or rather Pyrrhic. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So are many policy victories. So let's, we've beaten this horse to death, I think. So why don't we
Can I add something?
Okay,
Can I add
please
something
do.
before we
Yes.
go forward? Sorry.
Why are you so
I was-
polite, Tammy? Everybody, we're not polite people. You are too polite.
Come
Quit
on.
being polite.
I just wanted to bring in the UK election, which happened on Monday or Thursday. I can't remember what day it was. I guess it was Thursday. And so they promised that they weren't going to overdevelop the green spaces. They said, no, we're not going to do that. And today, the Labour minister announced that the green spaces are up for development. So the green spaces in the UK were set aside so that there would be space for nature or near urban areas and whatnot. And, you know, it's all part of climate change. We have to have these nice green spaces. And now Labour says, no, we have to fill them up with houses and development. And they're removing the ability of councils to be able to make decisions regarding the siting of onshore wind turbines and solar installations. The Labour government has said this is now a national issue and it cannot be left up to councils any longer. So, I mean, one of the things is that the British really pride themselves on is having these beautiful green spaces and really nice natural areas. And so now, true to form, Labour says, yeah, we don't need that now. We're going to develop it.
This is
so will they allow, this is the most pressing question for me, will they allow Jeremy Clarkson to have his restaurant on his own land in an area?
No, he bought a pub. He bought a pub instead.
Bought a pub.
Well, he's going to buy a wind farm next. He's going to just lease it all to the wind industry, I guess.
No, come on.
In season 4.
I hope this never happens.
I love that show.
Season 4 will be about his pub that he bought.
Yeah.
It's a few miles away, and I think that's where he wants to put the produce and the whatever from his farm operations that they'll use it at the pub instead of a
And
I
the
restaurant.
local
love always
council is allowing that. The local council allowed that?
Well, they
Well,
can't
he
stop
bought
him
it.
from buying a pub.
Yeah, they can't stop him from buying a
Okay.
pub, right?
This is clever.
But now other pub owners are complaining, saying, "Oh, he thinks it's going to be so easy, and why is he doing that?" It's just the usual kind of complaint.
Mm,
But-
Okay. Well, so just my comment on the UK elections. Labour Party is a communist party, just like the Communist Party that won in France.
In France,
Even though the quote right-wing party got the most votes, the Communist Party in France ended up with the most seats in parliament.
Wonder how
Communists
that
are
happened.
always going to go as radical as they can go as soon as they seize office. And that's what the Labor Party's doing. I said this on this show 2 weeks ago. That's exactly what they would do. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we have to learn the same lesson over and over again in this world. It's not just in the United States, folks. It's in Europe too. So
No, it's a new lesson, because I'll never tire of repeating it, that the old communists, the Eastern European, the Soviet bloc communists, knew that they need to keep life cheap. They need
true.
to
Yes.
keep energy
Yes.
cheap. They got that right.
Yeah.
These idiots don't think about that,
Yeah.
because they do not represent the poor people. So in that sense, they are not communists. They're idiots.
They're corporate
Idiots.
communists. They're corporate
The-
communists.
The corporate communists, I
Yeah.
like that, or the corporate
they-
totalitarians. They
Right.
want total control, but they do not try to, sweeten the pill.
Correct.
they're like the
They
Jacobins.
make it as bitter as it can be, and this will ultimately be their demise, by the way. They never learn. They could have learned
No.
lessons from the old totalitarians, the communists, the actual communists. Yeah, they didn't.
Thanks, Irina.
Yeah,
Thank you, Patrick.
because it's like they're going to do it better this time. that's
They're
the
gonna do it
the mantra,
this
right?
time. Yeah.
We'll do it right this time.
Yeah, do it right this time.
Well, the
Definitely.
problem for the voters in the UK is that what was their choice? The
I know.
Tories had made such a mess of everything, that they
It was a
had to
protest
switch.
vote, and
Yes,
if you look at what the popular vote percentages are, he's got Starmer has 32% of the vote, the Labour Party, and he's claiming he's got this massive mandate, right? Just because he
Right.
has a lot of seats. So to me, this reminds me of the Alberta election in 2015, which was really a protest vote against what the Conservatives were doing there. And the people just got angry and voted the Socialists in because that was the other alternative, right? And
Right.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 5 years.
Protest votes don't really work.
no,
Can
they
I-
don't.
No.
Yeah,
Before we go on to the stories, can I throw this out as a real question for France and for the UK and Bulgaria and the EU, because the illegal immigration is encouraged by the Pope is a real problem. And when we see, I think that there's over 400 churches in France have been destroyed in the last 4 years, Christian churches. And with the anti-Muslim fervor now standing up, and people are wanting to see, and you saw, I believe it was Spain, having a family parade saying, hey, have babies, be a nuclear family, stay, have home values and stuff. I think it's going to be a more social clash going on. Oh,
And this
Robert,
is our final viewer comment. It's a choice between a douchebag and a shit sandwich. Yes, you're right. That is
Okay.
true.
Yeah, Mihai's comment is very good along these lines. Sorry, Stu.
Almost all
He-
votes are
he's
protest
right.
votes these days. Yes, elections aren't won; they are lost by somebody else. Yes, absolutely. And
People
it's
don't
not
vote
just-
for, they vote
Yeah.
against.
Against, which is not a good scene. And
No.
then Tom has this really great argument here or point where he says that he's been in the energy efficiency demand response DER space since the mid 80s. He left that part of the energy industry in 2022 because of the madness. If you want to talk energy realities, you need to address the reality of adding millions of EVs to an already strained grid.
We've done
And
that.
he has some stats here. 1 million, 7.2 kilowatts, level 2 EV chargers is 7,200 megawatts. That 7,200 megawatt alone is the equivalent of 57,600 acres of solar panels that produce 0 megawatts at night. There are more than 15 million vehicles just in California.
Yeah.
So that is a super important point because on the one hand, we're told we have to electrify our transportation. So EVs, including buses and trucks and all that kind of stuff. And then we have the AI doing all of their stuff, pulling from the grid. So yeah, what's the energy reality here? And I think if we circle back to what we talked about earlier, it becomes a matter of the only solution there is nuclear. But nuclear, as much as I like it, also has certain problems especially with respect to terrorism and whatnot. So, with anything, there's trade-offs. And I think, as Stu had mentioned earlier, the biggest casualty here is the general public, and because it'll bring energy poverty and inability to move around and everything. So that
Can
could
I add
create
this
some
one slide, Tammy, and to support this? What is net zero? Okay, we have the energy transition. What is net zero when you have these are the current volcanoes erupting around the world right now. No matter what we do with trying to do anything, it's about the pollution. When you take a look at the numbers, I had the stats and I've lost it on one of my 10 screens, but there's a lot of pollution, a lot of CO2 going out there, and we're still low on the CO2.
Yeah, and by the way, this is not a very active period right now for volcanic eruptions. It's actually the Ring of Fire is in a down cycle, and so
you don't say sorry, David. Don't say pollution and CO2 in one sentence. They're different.
right. They're not the same thing.
Volcano eruptions do cause pollution, but hey, this kind of pollution cools the planet. All
That's
those
right.
particles, they're cooling the planet. Sorry, David.
No, that's good. I was finished. Okay, should we go to articles now? I mean, we're still getting a lot of comments, but Stu's frozen up. No, now he's not.
Okay.
So let's go to headlines.
Oh my gosh, that's me. Okay.
That's you.
Woo. All right. So the first article there was in the Financial Post, and it was written by Joe Oliver, and the title is Scientific Method Counters Climate Alarmism. And this was a really great discussion about how the scientific method hasn't really been utilized by those who are professing to be scientists with the climate alarm side. And he cited this paper that was presented as being an expert witness in a court case in The Hague, and it was written by Bill Happer, I think Richard Lindzen, and I can't remember who the third person was, but they made a really compelling argument in a fairly short space about the use of the scientific method, and this is what the reality is versus what all the models are saying. And I highly recommend people checking out this article because it's a really great representation of the sort of larger debate that we're experiencing these days with respect to climate alarmism and reducing emissions and all this kind of thing. And then the second article there is from Euractiv, where a Hamburg group has signed a deal for Chinese wind turbines in German waters. So on the one hand, we have this new massive tariff to prevent Chinese EVs from entering the European Union because they want to protect the German auto industry. One of the big pitches for the energy transition, especially in Germany, but in Europe, has been, we're making the wind turbines. This means that we're creating jobs and we can export them and it'll be really great, but they're expensive now because of energy costs and other things. So now they're going to have China make the wind turbines, at least on this project in Germany. So yet another example of unintended consequences, maybe, and economic realities, especially with respect to expensive energy.
Holy
Continued
moly.
deindustrialization is what that is.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're really trying hard.
They are. They're taking out all the stops. Okay, who's next? Irina.
That's me. Yeah. So
Much
I'd
better
like
looking than
More
David.
wind.
Wall Street Journal article. A conservative farm town went green without really trying. It's such a heart-melting story about a small town, a farming community in Minnesota that already has I forgot its name. It started with the Morris. Yeah, the Morris model. You see, they were told that building wind and solar would actually reduce electricity costs and they will have energy. It's a wonderful story. So they build wind turbines, they build solar, they have I think a biogas energy production facility. It's all very green, very, very wonderful. No mention of the constraints of any of these forms of energy. No, they're trying to replicate the model in other communities. And one of the sources cited in the story, which is by a guy who's a journalist, a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and nonfiction writer. He's not a climate activist, at least not, outwardly, overtly. But one of the sources interviewed for this story was cited saying that it's about framing the narrative. If you say it's about saving the planet, people won't pay attention to you. If you say that it's about, saving money on energy, then people might listen. Apparently, this is what happened in this small Minnesota community. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think Minnesota has some really serious winters.
Yeah.
Big time.
I remember talking about with Tom Nelson. I think they do get a lot of snow. There is no word in the article about what happens to the solar panels during the winter, which also tends to be windless. Not a word about any of this. Now, I enjoy a good story, but when it's supposed to be a journalistic story, I expect some kind of objectivity, at least a mention about some limits to wind and solar. There's no mention of this. It's a fantasy land. That's well done. It would be great if this community has cheaper energy, which I doubt, given the costs of having solar. But yeah, so we have this beautiful story. But an even more beautiful story is that Germany set to overhaul subsidy regime for renewable energy. How do you think they're going to overhaul it, in case you haven't read my Substack today? Okay, so they're going from guaranteed electricity prices over 20 years to a lump sum upfront. You want to build a solar farm? Here's this, I don't know, €1 million. Do what you want with it, build your farm. We're not guaranteeing minimum prices for your electricity. Why would that be, do you think?
I don't know. I don't understand this.
It's a mystery. Yeah, so apparently the money is running out in Germany.
Yeah, of course it is.
But they're saying that they're doing this because they're planning to see wind and solar stand on their own 2 or however many feet. They think wind and solar can survive without subsidies in the not too distant future, which is why they're changing their subsidy regime. I think it's a beautiful story of hope.
It's always a not so distant future.
Yeah.
Always.
A rolling 10 years.
Those are my words. They didn't say that.
It's like Greta Thunberg's deadline. It's like Greta Thunberg's deadline for the world going up in flames. It's always 10 years from now.
Didn't we pass?
And same with Al Gore, right?
Yeah. Dunkelflaute, yeah.
1815, the year without a summer. I can't remember. Was it Pinatubo that erupted that year?
Yeah.
I can't remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is me. U.S. crude oil posts fourth straight weekly gain on solid demand outlook. Imagine that.
No.
It looks like OPEC's going to be right again on
Yep.
global demand increase. Here we got the IEA predicting 900,000 barrel increase in demand for the year, for the full year, for crude oil globally. We have the IEA now at, 1.1 million barrels a day, I think, their latest update. They update it every month because they know they really undersold it at the first of the year with 800,000 barrels. And then we have OPEC sitting there holding firm at 2.25 million barrel increase for the year. And here we are, weekly gains, solid demand outlook, just as most of the real experts predicted in January. The second half of the year is going to be a lot stronger than the first half of the year was. I think we've had about a 600,000 barrel per day increase in global demand so far this year. We're going to have at least double that during the second half of the year. And we're going to end up close to a 2 million barrel per day increase in global demand for crude. And so OPEC's going to be more right than anybody else one more time, which seems to happen every year. Second, the federal judge paused Jennifer Granholm's LNG pause, which is, she's the Department of Energy. That's the relevant department that's being administered from. So what happens next? Yes, Jennifer Granholm, who has tried as hard as she possibly can to justify this pause in LNG permitting with all these irrational, stupid, false explanations for a stupid, irrational policy, got shot down by a judge in Louisiana. And in the process of his decision, he termed the policy part of the regulatory idiocracy. I just want everyone to notice that word because I do a weekly podcast with a radio station out of Alabama that is titled Tales from the Idiocracy. So this federal judge has apparently been watching my weekly podcast, and I really appreciate the reference. Anyway, it's absolutely accurate. The whole suite of energy policies coming from the Biden government is a complete idiocracy, and it's going to lead us to a lot of disasters down the road. And that wasn't very entertaining, but it's all I got.
Well, the Jennifer, this lawsuit was, I believe, the second or third after the Chevron deference Supreme Court.
Oh yeah, she had a bad week last week.
Oh yeah.
So I was told by someone who knows that about 80% of the employees at the headquarters of the EPA took the day off Monday so that they could mourn the Supreme Court
Really?
decision reversing Chevron.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Is that
Sounds about
true?
right.
And they called in sick, yes, because they were emotionally upset because of the decision.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, you got to love that.
Yeah.
You can't buy entertainment like that.
No, you really can't. That was really for that. Thank you, David. These two, I got to give Tammy and Nemeth a shout out for the article here on Energy Notes from the Edge. This one is from Terry Edom. He is an author. I love Terry Edom. I affectionately call him Terry Grumpy Edom. He is an author up there. Energy Notes from the Edge, AI Lettuce. Energy Beast is fully unleashed. And when a bee gets an A, an insect skill set could benefit humans in an incredible way. This article really kind of goes through what we've talked about in a real way. And this really kind of got me thinking about some of the counter sets that to AI are going to be out there. And that is the two sets of grid, those that have money and those that don't. And so the article, Iran to purchase 10 billion cubic meters of Turkmenistan natural gas, is so critical because this is a example of what's going to happen to countries not like the UK that want to have interconnects. They're going to be countries that can afford natural gas and put in pipelines are going to survive and will have industrialization. So when you watch Iran being successful and Turkmenistan going through the Caspian Sea can then tie into the EU pipelines. Oh, guess where the EU is going to be getting some of their gas? Oh, Turkmenistan. And when you start looking at geopolitical and success for humanity, you're going to equate it with natural gas and those that have pipelines and those that move forward.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
So can you clarify, Iran is purchasing the natural gas, but I thought Iran had a lot of natural gas. So why are they purchasing it from Turkmenistan?
Because they're going to be using it as a broker.
I see.
And guess who buys it?
China?
EU.
Oh, EU. Okay.
I mean, it's going to go all over the place. So you sit back and it's Iran, because of the Biden administration's failure to do what I absolutely love Irina's t-shirt. Sanctions don't work as intended. and I absolutely, the Biden administration, Iran has monetized their sanctions. They taught Putin and Russia how to be successful under sanctions, and sanctions don't matter anymore. So now you're looking at Iran being a broker.
Well, so the Associated Press says that that deal was so that Turkmenistan will run the gas through Iran to supply Iraq.
Not necessarily. Where does it go in the pipelines? I can call up a pipeline map and it's where it goes. And then you export it on LNG. It goes anywhere. So now that there is a dark fleet, it's going to go to it's going to
in Iran.
That's right. And it's also to Pakistan and several others that need it very badly. And so it is becoming a gas hub.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pakistan, I read today that Pakistan is getting $3 billion in local investment, government investment, I gathered, to develop gas.
That is correct.
So yeah, countries are developing gas reserves, closing gas deals. Sure. They know what powers an economy.
That's right.
It's not just gas,
Pakistan was hurt really badly when the EU started out competing them. You know, Qatar broke. Was it Qatar or UAE broke their? I thought it was Qatar broke the agreement with Pakistan, saying, "Yeah, we'll pay the fine because the European Union's paying us like double."
It wasn't the only one. I think a lot of gas traders,
a lot of U.S. cargoes got redirected too. Yeah.
And then
18 months ago, there was that story. 18 months ago, there was that story of the poor kids in Pakistan carrying natural gas in plastic bags home, so that they can so they could cook. People need reliable, cheap energy, and they're going to find a way. Energy and love finds a way. I believe Irina came up with that one.
Yeah. That's actually a t-shirt design idea I've had.
That's a great one. I'll buy one.
That's right.
Always find a way.
Did I answer that one, Tammy?
Yeah. I like this comment from Patrick. No energy in winter is free energy.
That makes perfect sense. You can't argue with that.
You can't. You cannot. Well, guys, I think we've had a good show today, despite my leadership. Great podcast. Patrick Devine agrees with me. Yes. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Is the rest of his comment, Patrick's comment, and I wish the same to you all and to everyone who chimed in with questions and comments. Really appreciate it. Thanks, and we will see everyone next week.
Thanks, everybody.
See you in 2 weeks. Have a great time.